call this meeting to order. It's January 21st, 2020, and the time is 6:05 p.m. First hearing for tonight, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 as amended, there'll be a public hearing to consider a request for determination of applicability from Peter and Mary Ellen Grimes to determine if the removal of 5 trees in a wetland is subject to the Wetlands Protection Act. Address 842 Union Street, map 396, parcel 43. Is anyone here representing the applicant?
That would be me. Is there any particular place to stand, or?
Wherever you're comfortable is fine.
Okay. I'm Peter Grimes. My wife Marilyn and I have lived at 842 Union Street for 43 years. What prompted this request was back about 6 or 8 years ago during a major wind event, 4 pine trees uprooted, totally uprooted, and came down on my house. Luckily there was no damage, but we're trying to be proactive, and we'd like to see if we get have the ability to remove these other 5 trees. Across the street from us on Union Street is the man-made pond. It's long-term residence. It was right next to the Tuttle farmhouse. The overflow of that pond goes through a culvert across Union Street onto my property. And these trees that we're talking about are on the house side of that brook, if you will. There's 5 trees. They range anywhere from 18 to 22 feet from the house. Some of them are 50 feet high. This brook that comes under the road will dry up in the summertime, but we're fearful that the root structure of these trees, the ground is damp, and that these trees might be subject to coming down. One of the trees, the first tree, as you come onto my side of Union Street, has utility lines going through it. National Grid, Verizon. The other 4 do not. As far as we can determine, we don't believe there's any adverse impact on the town water supply or private water supply, or any effect on or groundwater supply.
One thing with the trees is, just from a conservation point, one thing that we do like about trees is that they provide canopy, for the brook. Obviously, safety is a major concern. So
Mr. Harris is correct. I've been at this site multiple times. I actually met there with Amanda last week as well.
Okay.
There really isn't so the stream that goes through is a perennial stream. It is Fallbrook Reservoir. It flows through the pond at Cavicchio's. But where these trees are, there actually isn't wetland vegetation. I went there before the snow in the fall. I believe it was in early November, early October. And there really isn't much vegetation. There's a lot of ornamental vegetation. And these trees, I don't believe that they're not native. They look like the trees that you get for Arbor Day back in the 90s.
Okay, yeah.
And when you look at the trees, you can see their roots are actually popping up because they need oxygen. They're not thriving there. And so I do think they do pose a risk to the house. I think there really isn't much vegetation to shield. There are trees on the other side as well that do have a canopy that do look like they're natural. I think maples or oaks.
Okay.
So it is my recommendation to issue a -3 so they can take the trees with the condition that they'll leave the stumps in because they do want to hold that banking in.
Yeah, I agree with her too, because they are pretty close to the house, and also it's manicured lawn up to the bank of the stream on their side of the stream. And it's very obvious when you look at it that these trees that they are wishing to take down are trees that were planted there at some point. They don't match any of the other vegetation that's in that area. And as Angela said, you can see on all of them, the roots are really trying to come up. So I think if they just kept the roots in, just to make it also so that their lawn doesn't fall into the stream, you know, those roots will stay and hold up that bank. But there's no other vegetation in that area. It's just the manicured lawn, and then it's the trees. So.
And the lot's been pre-existing since 1967, I believe.
Do you have a company in mind? The reason I ask is that the equipment, there's some people that can come in with like, they come in with like a crane, and that way they don't have to disturb, because, you know, the biggest concern is the disturbance in the area.
It was actually their landscaping company. I forget to your which said you guys were using.
It doesn't matter the company as much as the equipment.
It was a choice between affordable and
Yeah, I believe they're the ones who actually told them to contact us.
Okay.
But I believe your wife told me they did have the means to do it. The only thing I am concerned about is that the tree that is touching the utility lines, you actually have to contact National Grid, or you have to have someone who is certified by National Grid to do that, because there is a risk of being electrocuted.
Okay.
I only know that because I have a tree in my front yard that touches the utility lines.
So that one tree would have to be.
Yeah, I would let them know, and what they'll do is they'll either come back and they'll either take it out for you, or they'll come back and they'll take down the limbs that are contacting the lines.
Okay.
Just, you know, for that one.
So I'm comfortable with it. It's just make sure if you can do it when the ground's frozen, that's great. That way there's no disturbance to the soils. Or if they can get in there with minimal disturbance, that's really my biggest concern.
And they've been very welcoming to me on the property and to their homes.
All right, so you can work
Keep an eye on
you can work with Angela, assuming that everything goes well with the vote,
Okay.
to make sure that everything's protected. But
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we,
Do you want to open it to the public?
yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on this request for a second time? Third and final time? All right, everyone comfortable closing the public comment? All right. No, that's a good catch. All right, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we issue a -3 determination and allow the owner to take the 5 trees off the property.
Any discussion or a second?
I will second that, just like we said, with the condition that we just cap them and keep just a stump in place so the roots keep holding the bank up.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? You're all set.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
I'll
you.
contact you tomorrow and give you the information. This is just the legal end.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, for the next hearing, pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended. There will be a public hearing to consider an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation by Matthew Morrow Environmental Consulting for the 291 Trust to evaluate the boundaries of an area subject to the Wetlands Protection Act, Lot E, Orchard Hill Park Drive, map 386, Lot 4-1C, DEP file number 199-1083.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, these were the latest revised plans submitted based on the survey work by Whitman and Bingham. And I know that I have been having some reservations about connecting this particular area, and as I relayed to Angela over the phone, I've been monitoring it for months through different rainstorms. I know I showed you guys some videos. With some of the recent melting that I saw out there, I did see some of the area connect down through here. It's the only time through the whole year I've seen it. Now, I know that, there is a school that basically says that, you do have areas that isolate that will occasionally overflow its banks and touch a wetland. In this area, with the way I saw it, you could call it either way. And I know that, Larry, you and Angela were out there this weekend.
Yeah.
And was there an area that you had a question about?
Well, there was a few, and I don't recall, there was that spot with the seat was one of them.
Yes. And we just put some of the flags where let's read over wear and tear.
Yeah, like
For the picture you sent me, we could see the corner of the building, which is this building right here, so I believe it was in this area. We had a seat that looked like it was coming through, but myself and Mr. Morrow discussed it. Yeah. And he said he did notice that as well, but there was no vegetation in that area.
Okay.
I think that was the only area.
So even, I mean, it's hard to tell vegetation this time of year, but.
And then, I believe it was this wetland up here that we had wandered up to, and we were looking at the wetland AV system, and there was the dead tree, and on one side we're like, oh, why isn't this a wetland? There's like
Yeah.
a cart path in between.
Yeah.
I did talk to Mr. Art Allen, our peer reviewer, and he said he didn't believe that was jurisdictional, that side, but this side.
Okay, he didn't
Possibly,
believe.
yeah, he didn't
Okay.
believe that.
No, what happened was we were out there scouting places to reevaluate.
Yeah.
He would tie to trees to mark approximate areas to come back and look at.
Okay.
Actually, this one here, this area here, this area here, and this area here, he and I actually wanted doing together. And as well as this area
Yeah.
over here. We just, there wasn't anything disputed over here, we just all talked about it and felt it'd be a good idea to do the street side of that wetland.
Yeah. And this is where the fire hydrant was over here, right? Off-site?
Yeah, with the blow off?
Yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting.
So, did the peer review, was he able to review this,
Yes.
the sign plan?
This one, yes, and he did send out comments. I'm just trying to find. I had 3 comments, I believe, that we went over at the last meeting, and the only one that wasn't addressed was the connection between the 2 wetland apps system, and then Mr. Morrow you corrected the was it flag 119?
I believe it was 118, and yeah, that was
118,
correct.
That was correct. That was just an error. And so the only thing left was for us to discuss the wetland connection, which we did take a look at between the wetlands FF and is it A? I can't see the word. Sorry.
It was double F22, double F23, double
Yes,
F2, and double F1.
And from what I saw on the site, just looking at vegetation, that you can kind of see a channel, and even through the snow, and kicking around, you can see the decaying leaves. The leaves had stained. I would agree with our peer reviewer that is a connection.
You all right?
Yeah. There's also a lot of moss on the rocks in the area in between.
I mean, this one's on the rocks.
No, I know, but I'm saying,
Like I said, when this started melting, it was the only time I
Yeah.
saw a connection. I wasn't sure whether or not you wanted this area more closer examined.
the seep, which one?
The seep.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the seep was just the seep. I think
Yeah.
we just wanted confirmation that you had seen it as well.
yeah, because I don't remember seeing a significant amount of vegetation in the area.
Yeah.
So I don't even if it was springtime or summer, I don't know if we'd have.
Honestly, the
Even
only
if I had the
time
soil.
that that's going to show up at all is right about now,
Yeah.
when everything starts to melt.
Yeah.
Everything up there collects water. As a matter of fact, if you go down the little ridge right around here where there's actually a cart path that between myself and the kids that go around there water in, you actually get seeps out there too from just the foot traffic.
Yeah.
I don't know, did you guys catch that TP?
I'm sorry?
Did you guys
Yeah,
catch
we
the
saw the
TP?
TP, yeah.
Some kids out there were making a very elaborate teepee out of the branches and some plastic wrap. It was pretty cool, actually.
So I guess it's just a matter of how we feel about the connection and whether or not that's isolated versus connected. I mean, that's the one thing that our peer review and I guess you differ on, I guess at this point.
Well, I feel it could be called either way.
Okay.
He seems more clear-cut in his opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked with Art for many years. The fact that he would doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have 5 other people go on here and come up with 5 different
Yeah.
lines.
Yeah, I mean, the way I kind of look at it is we paid an independent consultant. If that's his purview. I mean, we're paying him for his opinion.
All right, well, I suppose I can have the plans redrawn and come back at the February meeting, if that's okay. And then we can just relook over the plans and you guys can see if you agree with the redrawn line, and that'll be it.
With the connection.
With the connection, yes.
Looks good to me.
Does anybody else have any other things they'd like brought up?
Can I ask one question?
Yeah.
This is only my second ANRAD. But there is an option here for modified, the boundaries described in the plan referenced above as modified by the Conservation Commission. And the plans contained in the review of rear delineation are accurately drawn. So could we, just because I do feel that this has been on our agenda for almost a year now, would we be able to state the connection modification, receive the new plans, and then issue the permit after issuing tonight with that, with the modified?
Well, I spoke with my client about it. He was willing to just talk about it, go through the lines, and then
Okay.
do one more continuance.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because I do know it was kind of,
I mean, you could
Kinda
do it
long
that.
time.
I mean, well, yeah, and it's actually probably a blessing because I was able to observe a lot of the hydrology on that whole site. So anything he does with that in the future, I'm pretty familiar with what's going on out there water-wise now. You know, seeps and water courses and different areas that will flood at different times of the year.
so if you're comfortable waiting until the next meeting, which is next week, the 20th.
Well, can we do it for the 11th?
Perfect.
He's fine with that too.
All right, as long as, everyone's happy with that decision. Just
Yeah,
trying to help.
I just don't want to rush, engineering company's got enough to do right now and then just do a quick change. But I want to talk to my client first, and he's in Miami right now, so
Oh, okay.
I guess it's his dad's birthday today.
Aw.
It's fine, much longer than we are.
Not much.
Angela, is this making the drive?
Yes, it is.
All right, so, I guess you're gonna look for a continuance?
Yes, please.
All right, just is there anyone here that would like to speak relative to this project? Second time? Third and final time? Still gonna keep the hearing open, but,
February 11th.
so, what is it, February 11th? So the next meeting, is to be continued until the February 11th meeting. And we do have a meeting next week, all right?
In the meantime, if for some reason any questions come up, while we, do have the time in between, let me know. I'll be more than happy to go back out on the site with you guys. So just give me a phone call. No big deal.
Did you want a copy, Paul, to look at?
It's in the drive.
Oh, it is, okay. I didn't know if you wanted
Thanks to
to.
the shot to the spring I had a couple of weeks ago, I got the spring back in my step.
All right, nice. So moving on, we got a couple that are gonna be continued. I'm just gonna, do we have it in writing or are we gonna ask?
It was left to me over the phone, so, Mr. Morrow, you left me a message asking for a
Yes.
continuance.
All right, I'm gonna read these together and then we'll continue. So these next two hearings are gonna be continued pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 as amended. There'll be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent for James Xaris for the development of a single-family residential house lot within the 100-foot wetland buffer zone. Address Lot 3, Mary Ave Extension, map 419, Lot 23, DEP file number 199, 1085. The next continued hearing pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 as amended. There'll be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent for James Xaris for the construction of a 3-lot residential subdivision within the associated roadway utilities. The eastern portion of the project is within a 100-foot wetland buffer zone. Address 1157R, map 419, lot 23, DEP file number 199, 1086. So those are both going to be continued. While Mr. Morrow's here, we had 2 issues under an extension permit,
Yes.
and we have a partial. I don't know if
Just so
it's-
the commission knows on that continuance, by the way, and the continuance is Mr. Paragal's report will be in this week. He assured me of that yesterday. I will make sure that it's forwarded to the commission right away. It'll afford you a good amount of time to be able to examine the report and send it to Chris Lee. So.
So I have no problem skipping over to the certificate of compliance, the partial COC. I just wanted to explain to the commission a little bit, Mr. Morrow doesn't mind. So the building for the botanist, which is the actual business that's going to be going in at, the address is 1775, I believe it's 1798 Block Drive.
Okay.
Is ready to go. Unfortunately, they couldn't get their occupancy permit until they had COC for the property, but since we had issued a order of conditions for the 2 lots when they were 1, the 1 order of conditions goes for both lots. Now both lots have been subdivided. The second lot, which was the large industrial building over on Lock Drive,
Okay.
has they have the foundation and they have most of the site work done. And unfortunately, because of the early winter we had, it was put on hold. But all of the work on the Natural River side, where the botanist, the smaller building is, has been completed. But unfortunately, they can't get a full COC until we issue
Okay.
theirs. Occupancy until we issue our COC for them.
And we have engineered plans and all that?
Yeah,
Stamped
it's all
engineered plans?
stamped engineered plans.
Just looking for the partial COC on that.
Yeah.
So, and we have that in the file, we have a...
Yeah, but it's all in the file and it's
Okay.
all on the the Google Drive.
Okay.
So if the commission has any questions, sorry, Samara.
All right.
No, that's fine.
Does anybody have any?
No worries.
Yeah, I recommend that we issue the partial COC with just all the perpetual conditions attached.
Okay, the ones that are in the order
Yes,
conditions? Okay.
it's just the normal perpetual ones.
Okay. Does anybody have any recommendation?
Can I just look, I don't have an agenda. Can I just
Yeah.
look at some
Oh,
of the
yeah.
address on here?
This is our agenda, sorry.
75 or 95?
So what happened was
Block
that
Drive?
they originally done the 1775 address, but because of the side of the street it was on, it had to be an even number, I believe, so they switched to 1798.
So it must have got changed to 911 system.
Yeah, it's for the 911 system. It wasn't really something that we had. So I am updating the file with the correct numbers.
Okay.
I will make a motion that we issue the partial COC for 1775 Lot Drive, DEP file 199-1036, with the conditions that our agent stated.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Opposed? And then I guess there's also an issue of an extension permit for this.
Yes. So the permit will expire in February 2020. And so as the other building isn't completely built and they have not had a chance to do the flood storage compensation area yet, due to ground freezing too soon, they're looking for an extension permit for 3 years to finish up the work on that lot.
They'll have to do the compensatory,
Yeah.
planting, all that. So.
Yeah. Everything's sold.
Now, okay.
That's right.
So there is a compensatories on the
On
other
the
lot?
second lot, yeah.
Okay.
So if we didn't extend it, then we never get our company.
Right, okay, yeah, I just
Or
wanted,
flood storage, sorry, I can't
Yeah.
talk today.
okay. Do I have a recommendation on the extension permit for Lot Drive? DEP file number 199-1036.
Yeah, I will make a motion that we issue that extension permit for 3 years for 1775 Lock Drive, DEP 199-1036.
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have
Matt.
a great night.
Thanks, you too.
All right, let's try this. See if I have better luck. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, there'll be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent from Whitney Carriage Associates Limited Partnership, represented by Whitman and Bingham Associates, for the replacement and lowering of several windows within the riverfront. The work will be above the floodplain, address 122 Water Street, Leominster, map 22, parcel 1, DEP file number 199-1106.
Good evening. I am Anthony Cleves from Whitman and Bingham Associates. Also have Bob Ruggles here from Whitman Carriage.
There's a clip in the back, it looks like, too.
That's not gonna work.
Fancy schmancy.
So fancy doesn't work.
Yeah.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
I don't know where it came from, so.
Probably take me longer to do that than to talk about the project. So I believe you've seen this plan once before. And my understanding is, I think you were all set with this one that we're talking about now, the windows, and you're waiting for a DEP file number. I can quickly go over the project again if you'd like. Basically, it was this portion of Whitney Carriage, replacing the windows on the brook side, where they're planning on coming down from the roof to access the windows, do as much work as they can interior to eliminate any disturbance outside, and then as part of the work, they're going to have a netting at the bottom of the building to capture any debris that may fall, to keep it from going into the brook. So that was the gist of that. We did get the DEP file number, and there were no comments on that project.
One thing too is they mentioned that they might go in there and pull out trash and things like that.
Yeah.
So just, it's allowed, so, yeah. I don't know if we need to note that and know that it's allowed, well, it's an allowed activity, I guess, so.
Yeah, I think that's
we're
fine.
good.
I think they've kind of been doing it like as they had, because I know I was on site the other day just checking out the playground that was installed. And we looked over and he was like, oh yeah, we found a bike there, they pulled a bike out. So they are doing all right here, they're doing all the right way, so.
Right, yeah, so we don't have to bother with it.
If you want, you could put a condition that
No.
any removal has to be done by hand if you'd like, but.
No, because it's not really part of it.
Yeah.
I appreciate them going through all these efforts. I mean, it's, oh, it doesn't need to be here, but they're doing everything they possibly can to protect the area, and it's appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
So, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this? Second time? Third and final time?
So I recommend that we issue an order of conditions for DEP file number 1991106 for the window replacements with our general boilerplate.
Is there anybody that wants to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for the window replacement project, DEP file number 1991106.
I'll second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, as amended, there will be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent for Whitney Carriage Associates Limited Partnership, represented by Whitman and Bingham, for the regrading and striping of 10 parking spaces to the west and 3 parking spaces to the south of the main office, 124 Water Street. The project also includes removal of 2 parking spaces to create a dumpster service area to the south of the main office. This project also includes restriping a new wooden stockade fence and a guardrail in the parking lot to the corner of Whitney Street and Water Street. These projects take place within the riverfront area and floodplain. Address 122 Water Street, 124 Water Street. Parking lot on the corner of Whitney Street and Water Street, Leominster. Map 22, Parcel 1. Map 21, Parcel 9. Map 26, Parcel 1A. DEP file number 1991105. You're gonna go shorter.
That wasn't my fault.
Again, my name is Anthony Cleves. I'm with Whitman and Bingham Associates, here on behalf of the Whitney Carriage Project. Same plan that we just looked at, just a couple different sections. Again, I believe you've seen this previously and have gone over it. And same thing, it was waiting for a DEP file number, which we have, and there were some comments on that DEP file number. Just to refresh, we have existing parking lot on this side of Water Street. That's where plan to, no repaving, no new pavement, just restriping, and fence to go along this edge here between this property and that property for security purposes, as well as a guardrail to keep people from driving into the fence. And then the other portions of the work were on the other side of the site with some regrading of existing handicap parking to get them to meet ADA requirements. And so what I passed out to you is zoomed in area here, which I believe was really what the last item was for the commission to consider and DEP to comment on. So basically DEP's comment was to make sure that you satisfy the requirements for work in the floodplain. And so we went through and did calculations on approximately how much flood storage would be taken up by the fence posts, the thickness of the fence, the guardrail post, and the guardrail to come up with about how much storage could be lost by that. And in doing that calculation, we come up with 102 cubic feet of potential flood storage lost. So what we proposed is right in the same, so here's a fence and guardrail on this property line. Right adjacent to that, proposing an excavation 4 inches deep, 306 square feet in area to match that lost flood storage. So it's pretty small area, pretty minimal work associated with that. So that was how we tried to address that comment on that.
Just one quick question, like, I'm just trying to, what is this area gonna be? Is it gonna be like grass, or is it gonna be
Which,
the area you're excavating out?
as it is now, grass.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm just,
nothing different.
yeah, no, I just wanna make sure, because
Yeah.
it's just one of those things over time,
Yeah,
you know, these things get filled in.
yeah,
So-
yeah. So just grass as it is now, I believe, Bob. Yeah, just grass. Yeah.
Because we've had cases where things like that happen, and then a new, you know, somebody else buys something smaller, and then they'll say, oh, I want to park cars here, and then they'll just
Yeah.
pave the whole thing flat, and then we lose that storage.
No intent,
So-
you know, just leaving everything the way it
Yeah.
is. It's literally just bringing that grade down 4 inches,
Yeah.
just to make up for that little storage that we're losing.
So the only thing I would ask is we get a copy of like that design, you know, like that gets sort of transferred over with when there's a certificate of compliance,
Oh,
so
okay.
that it's recorded with it, so that future commissions can come back and, you know, if there's ever a question about that area.
Like an as-built plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's been, a lot of your standards now too, is to have
Yeah.
as-built plan.
So are you saying to have like the as-built plan with the flood storage on it recorded with the COC?
Yeah, and that way, you know, 10 years from now, if they come back for something and that area is whatever,
We know that
Yeah.
it's there for a reason.
yeah. Because we've had that happen where things are, you know, no one was on the commission when the house was built in the 60s, and
Right,
suddenly
right.
something comes up. And
Sure.
So, yeah.
So that would be the only excavation work within the
Yes.
100-foot riverfront area. Just doing my math for me.
Yeah, that's it.
Is anyone from the commission that has any questions?
I have one question. Is this a guardrail that goes along the
No.
brook?
No, that's,
What divides the proposed snow storage area from the brook itself?
there's no barrier along the river, correct, Bob? No?
There's no barrier.
No. I'm just wondering what would prevent somebody from pushing the snow right into the brook.
There is a chain link fence for part of it.
There's a chain link fence there?
Has it-
Not all
has
of
it
it's
chain-
part of it,
Part of it.
but where there isn't a chain link fence, you really couldn't push it, it's too far.
Because as you get closer to Water Street.
There's boulders and other things that would stop a snowplow from pushing it in. The riprap that was put there probably when it was built in, our best guess, the 1950s or so.
Do you do your own plowing down there, or?
We do, and it's co-joint. We have a guy that parks equipment that works closely with us, and then supervised with a guy who's always there. So it's kind of an extension of our own operation.
So the snow is piled up at the far south end, adjacent to the adjacent property owner, right there, in that corner.
Well, right now, but this is the plan for the unit splits, maximized. So you're looking at it from a maximized, once we spoke about a unit split plan where we introduced 35 new units into this while keeping the existing footprint of the property, taking overly large 2 and 3 bedroom size units and splitting them in half. Every day we get a call for 1 bedroom in studio. This is kind of going down the wrong path here, but this is why, this is the reason it's restriped, is to accommodate the planning commission requirement to park these amount of cars.
That was my next question. Do you need all of these parking spots?
We do need all of those parking spots.
Okay, so say they could move the snow storage to the other end, but they need those.
So what we did is take as much of the snow storage and put it up against the bank along Whitney Street as possible, and then there's an island. And I think it's only minimal snow storage that's up against the brook right now. So, I mean, as a practice, we could fill up the other 2 first, and then I think that I know that we agreed with the plan condition. There's a condition that once those fill up, we have to truck off. But that's a condition, that's what we do right now. You know, if we ended up with 2 feet next week and the 2 feet the following week, all our storage spaces, fill up and we start to truck off. That's our practice anyways. But as a condition of the additional units, we're agreeing to truck off snow.
Did you guys use salt or sand? Do you know?
On the sidewalks where, there's the leasing office,
I was thinking like just in this parking lot.
we don't salt,
And salt, okay.
no. Just
That'd
snow
be my
removal
main concern.
in the sun.
Does go on sun.
Yeah.
So what is the distance so can you just point out where the chain link fence is?
There's a chain link fence here.
But it doesn't go where the snow storage is labeled.
No, because this fence is right along the curbing,
Yeah.
and there's a break in the fence to there.
So
We're
it,
probably about, let's say about 20 feet to 25 feet from the brook bin.
And there are large boulders which would prevent a
So
truck
like there
from
are some boulders there.
The riprap from when it was originally filled in. That's the most functional limitation right there, is that a snow blade couldn't push it past those boulders.
But, the operating staff is cognizant they're not supposed to plow snow into the swamp.
Well, and how are you going
Ideally.
to, if that's at the front of cars, you have to have it so the cars aren't there, and that's just a difficult thing in itself. Once the plan is to actually lease all these spaces and, use the property to its fullest. There's going to be cars there. The practicality of actually putting snow there is less likely than up against the bank, and then from the end and in the middle. And then we'll just have to truck it off after that.
would you like to see some kind of limitation on the height of the snow? I mean, that might help. Along the brook is where we're gonna see if there's any kind of, sand or
Be
anything.
agreeable to some sort of height limitation. Would you say like 12 or 15 feet or
I
something?
think that's almost even.
Okay.
Personally, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think this is just, I've been working with Mr. Proctor, who's the on-site manager there, as well as Mr. Ruggles really closely. I think maybe leaving up to the agent's discretion, you have to go out there and inspect it. We have heavy amounts of snow over immense time because, I went out there just to inspect, just do a quick site inspection of work that's already been done. And, they were like, okay, what do you need us to do? Do you need us to do anything else? And do you want us to do anything else? Like, they've called me more than my own mom does. They call me about everything. They've been really open to anything. I'd hate to put a height limitation on it and then have us get one of those like crazy, obscene snowstorms after snowstorm, and then have them not be able to truck it off. Or, go out there and say, oh yeah, it's 5 feet tall, you gotta truck it off every couple weeks. Especially where I think they have enough snow storage elsewhere.
I'm not worried about the snow storage over here. It's only
On the bank,
the portion along the bank. The rest of it, is that out of the floodplain? The snow storage?
No, this whole
The whole
site's
thing?
The whole site's in the floodplain.
Yeah.
Are there city requirements for snow storage in a flood? Well, the mall does it all the time, so
Yeah, well,
probably not.
I wouldn't say the city requirements for it, but I do know the planning board, I forget exactly what is, but they do require certain amounts of snow storage to be shown on the plans when they file
Yeah.
for their site plans. But I worry that, putting a height restriction on it is kind of stepping a little bit, I understand it's the larger section, but I think it's kind of overstepping when I think it'd be easier just to have, whoever the agent is, myself, hopefully for the next 50 years, go out and say, hey, can you start trucking snow off this area? But I don't think that they're going to be storing snow over there. From my understanding, they're really going to try and do it on the
Oh, right, understood, but
Street and-
it's just, it's the brook. It looks like it's like 10 feet from the brook. Maybe the actual snow storage? No.
I think it's about 1 inches already.
Can I just make a suggestion?
Yeah.
That,
I'm just trying to get the scale.
store to the point that it does not go into the brook. Because there's gonna be, what do they call it, the angle of repose, okay?
Right.
And where sand is not quite a 45-degree angle or something like that. Snow by itself has an angle of repose. And if we say storage such that snow does not go into the brook, we'd be agreeable to that. Also, I do think that once cars are there, it's gonna be a functional limitation, that cars are gonna get snowed in, you're gonna come out from underneath them, and unless that whole area is, and we never get all that, once the parking lot is in place, you never get everybody out of it. Go look today, tonight,
It's
the whole
impossible.
area that we try to shift from half and half without using the plan, and you can't get everybody out of there, so you have to plow around them. There will be people parking down there as soon as we, get to our final plan.
And if anything does happen, you guys have me, I can just,
Yeah. All right,
So it's like add a condition to make it, so it's brought, it's a point on your conditions, no snow is allowed to be dumped
into the brook.
into the brook. So it's right there attached, right attached to the condition.
Yeah, I think if we have that condition just with, at our agent's discretion, if we get a big snowstorm and she wants to take a drive over there to just check on it, personally, I'm fine with that, because otherwise I feel like we're setting ourselves up for a precedent that every time we have a project that has snow removal on it, we're trying to put conditions on height and things, and I think that could just get a little messy. So if we just have a condition that says snow removal can't go in the brook, and after a big snowstorm or at her discretion, our agent can go and just inspect it to make sure everything's okay. In my opinion, I'm fine with that.
Can you take a look at this for me and just, what is the distance from like the edge there to the actual brook? That's what I'm trying to.
Probably 10 from there, and then, but from the parking to
Yeah.
that point, it's probably closer to 18.
Yeah, no, right, but that's what I'm saying. It looks like it's only 10 feet from the
Right, but you also gotta keep in mind, you have
And it's
about
all-
18 feet of room before the 10 feet to pile snow. Bob, I don't know what you guys use for equipment. Is it just pickup trucks? You got front-end loaders?
We do not use front-end loaders.
I think when you look at the mall, for example, they have front-end loaders where they can scoop, dump. If you're doing with a pickup truck, they have a tough time getting it.
It's
All the way down.
It's a 24-foot parking lane, you wouldn't be able to get
Yeah,
a front-end loader to maneuver.
So you're gonna have to get your pickup, you have to jump the curb, because your plow's only gonna go 3 feet past the curb. So you get to jump the curb and keep pushing, and you'll have half your truck off of the pavement to keep pushing that snow in the brook. So I think it's, again, like what Mr. Arbels was talking about, the logistics of plowing this lot, you're probably gonna plow the access aisles while everyone's there, so you're just doing circles, and you're not gonna be able to push the snow there. You're kind of pushing it here, pushing it there, trying to get it there, trying to get the island. And then, if you eventually can get these cars moved, you're talking the snow just immediate in front of it from those parking spaces. So I think it's gonna be logistically difficult. You're gonna have to work, I think, to get the snow into the brook, in this case. Some cases, absolutely. You get big machines and you're right on top of it. Yeah, it's really easy to not pay attention to do that. I think you're gonna have to work to try and get it into the brook, in this case.
So what about like just having something that's saying the limit of snow storage, snow can't be stored, can't be pushed beyond the limit, the proposed snow storage in the plan? Just trying to think of a way to, I mean, it's understood that that's the case anyway.
Or even
but-
just to make it clear, no snow in the brook.
Right.
Period. That's what you're trying to protect.
Yeah.
You just have a special condition that does not allow any of the snow to migrate into the brook.
Yeah.
Not to cloud it, but unless, doesn't the state sometimes, it's in DEP sometimes, and I think it was like a few years ago, we had those monster storms. They actually issued a policy that allowed.
They do issue.
But that would
That trumps
supersede-
everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
I was just
supersede
curious about
ours.
that.
They do issue their own snow removal policy, but we just got it, so that's not this year, sorry guys.
That was my name. I'm sorry to open the bag of worms.
Yeah, no, that's why,
I predict
that's
this
why we're
bag
here.
of worms.
No, it's a valid.
All right, is anyone else in the commission have any questions? Anybody in the audience would like to speak on this? Second time? Third and final time? Does everyone feel comfortable closing?
Yeah, I'm fine with it.
I declare the public comment period closed. Do we have any discussion, any recommendation?
I make a recommendation, Mr. Chairman, that we issue the DEP file number 199-1105, an order of conditions with our general boilerplate, as well as a special condition that an as-built will be recorded with the COC, and another special condition that no snow may migrate into the brook.
Any discussion? Any recommendations?
Mr. Chairman, I will recommend that we issue an order of conditions for project DEP 199-1105 with the special conditions that our agent has outlined. Boilerplate with the as-built for the lowered area and no snow to migrate into the brook. Plowed snow.
That's a good point. Is there any discussion or
No, you must put a canopy.
second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, there'll be a public hearing to consider a notice of intent from Nicholas Lucina, represented by DJ and Associates, for the construction of a small commercial office building with a septic system within the wetland buffer zone. Address is 1341 Central Street, map 499, parcel 45, DEP file number 199-1104.
Mr. Stevens in the hallway, he said he's gonna get here at 7, so. He's not here yet, but Mr. Marchetti from Cardi Engineering is here.
Is that for another hearing?
That's for the next one, yeah.
All right, so
I don't know if you want to
we have a motion to, we have to
make a motion.
table this one, or what, not table, what's the word? What's the technical?
Just hold off on it, I guess,
Just hold.
just table it for
Mr.
a
Chairman, I
minute.
make a motion that we hold off on that hearing that you just announced and move to the next one to give the applicant a chance to get here.
I misread, the next one is for 133 Nashua Street, who's also here.
Okay. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, there'll be a public hearing to consider a request for an amended order of conditions by Central District Realty regarding proposed changes to a site plan and stormwater previously approved under DEP file number 199-1094, address 133 Nashua Street, map 379, parcel 5. Is anyone here representing them?
My name is Joe Danubio. I'm representing the
So you guys may remember this, it came through for Nashua Street, we have the Nashua River behind it. When they went to the planning board to get their special permit, the planning board wanted them to pave a specific area. It is outside the riverfront area of our jurisdiction, but it does impact the stormwater calculations. So myself and Joe, we discussed it might just be better just to amend the order conditions. There will be some increase, I believe, in disturbance in the 200-foot, if I'm correct, Joe? For the increase for the storm water, for the new stormwater system, because that has to be, those were changed, correct?
No, the pavement's outside the 200-foot
Okay.
buffer area. But regardless, there is an impact to the stormwater management calculations. So we did revise the calculations report and submitted it. Increased the infiltration system to accommodate the new impervious area so that the peak flows were mitigated, as well as all the other 10 standards defined by DEP.
And the city engineers
Yeah.
obviously approved it.
Yeah, they all took a look at it. Myself and the building department kind of said it wasn't necessary, but the planning board felt otherwise. So working with Joe, I reviewed the stormwater calculations, and I believe the increase in the infiltration system is adequate and meets the standards.
And honestly, the peak flows actually came down a little more than I had previously.
And where, on this map, where is that paved area located?
This is old line right here. So they wanted, there was a regulation in the ordinance that I think the parking areas had to be paved and striped. Otherwise, it required another special permit, other than the one we already applying for to use. So they were adamant about having that. So we did that to accommodate them. We also added as part of the ordinance as well, paved areas are not allowed to flow over to adjacent properties. So I did do some regrading in that area so that all the water stayed in the paved area and have that catch basin. And that went straight to the filtration system. Other than that, the plan was what you approved previously. It should be a little better conditions. And here, I'm gonna give you the, do you want the?
Yes.
You got, there are a couple missing, but we did our best.
That's all you can do. So it is, it's my recommendation that we issue the amended order of conditions. It's kind of out of applicant's hand. He tried to do the best per the regulations for low impact development. Unfortunately, the planning board really wanted this area paved. And we should issue the amended order of conditions.
Is there any questions from the commission? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak? This second time?
Just me, no?
Third and final time, okay. Everybody comfortable? I'm going to close the public comment period. And do we have any discussion or a motion?
I make a motion that we issue the amended order of conditions for DEP file number 1991094.
Any discussion or second? Second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Love you guys are so easy. Have a great night.
Don't jinx it.
Thank you again, Angela.
Sorry, this is for you. I didn't get you to email it over.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, are we going to go back to Central or then?
Doesn't look like Mr. Sadowski is here yet,
Okay.
so.
I need to get better glasses. Pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 is amended, there'll be a public hearing to consider a request for determination of applicability from Boucher Construction, represented by McCarty Engineering, for the determination if the construction of a two-family home within the associated site work and associated site work is subject to the Wetlands Protection Act, 57 Elm Hill Road, map 356, parcel 1.
Hey, Brian Marchetti, McCarty Engineering. Here tonight, as you just said, on behalf of Boucher Construction Company. This parcel here has been vacant for 10 years or more. There was an old structure that had been condemned. Back in 2008, McCarty permitted a industrial building on this property, so they're going to demo the existing house. This is actually the previous proposal that was approved by the town. We did receive an order of conditions from conservation for it. So it was a 400 square foot building with parking area, utility improvements, and pavement off of Litchfield Street. Across the street, so across Litchfield Street, there is an existing wetland. It wasn't flagged. This was GIS located. Back when this order was obtained, the intent was the owner was going to build it out. It was never developed. The order of condition has since lapsed. So Boucher has now bought the property from the owner and is planning now to put up 2 duplex buildings for residential on the site. As you can see, it's a significantly less of an impact. There will be no access from Litchfield Street, so there's no more impervious on the Litchfield Street side. The owner has already brought this to the City of Leominster. Being in the MU1 district, residential here is only by special permit, so they've already received a special permit for this development. And this is the last step because there are wetlands located across the street. We're requesting an RDA from this commission. Again, the whole site right now, the pavement that was on it before, the driveways, the buildings, it's all been demoed, it's all been raised. So the entire site now, as you see along Litchfield Street, is just in a vegetated condition. It's brush and trees and some grass. It's not by any means a landscaped area. So the only impact, as you see here, this would be the 100-foot buffer zone from the wetland across the street. There'll be it's less than 1,000 square feet of just a grading impact in order to facilitate these buildings and a level backyard for the structures. So it's pretty straightforward. The impact is mostly all up on Elmville Avenue, which is outside of the buffer zone. We're just asking for an RDA from the commission or a negative determination for the limited amount of grading that you see here. That's within the buffer zone. Do you have any
Can I ask you a question? Yeah, so the area behind that area that's going to be graded, so
Yep.
like I guess the stuff that's not colored in green,
Yep.
what is the intent for that part of the property?
It's all vegetated still. There's no curb cut. There's no access from Litchfield. So the only access would be from.
Yeah, no, so I did go out there with our agent, and I guess I'm because that's a pretty significant slope, so is there going to be any sort of, I guess, a retaining wall? Are you leaving that part of the slope just the way it is? Like,
We're not
what's going to...
proposing to touch any of that. So where you see the erosion controlled area here, we're grading back to existing conditions. So the slope as we see it here, at 20 scale, I believe this is more of like a 4-to-1, 5-to-1 slope.
Mm-hmm.
So it may look steep, but it's a very maintainable, mowable. It's not anything that's out of the ordinary for a residential yard.
Yeah, I guess my concern was just with the amount of stuff that you're going to have to take out of that property in order to do this. My concern was just with the amount of vegetation that you're planning to take out of that area, because that's basically what's keeping that slope in place. So I'm curious as to, because I know, like, the top part of it, there's not a ton of very tall trees, but as you go towards the back part of that property,
I mean, there is a
there
significant
is, so
portion here that is all being maintained. It's not going to be graded. We're not clearing it. We're not proposing to clear any trees out of there. So that vegetation that's within this white area here, and over here in the corner is proposing to stay.
Okay.
What's green here, up to the limit of our landscaped area, it will be graded. We'll have erosion control there, so it'll have to be stabilized, loam seeded. So, the erosion controls will remain in place until everything's stabilized, which is typical of any construction project, especially where we are in proximity to, a wetland.
Sure.
So.
And then, forgive me, because I'm just not good with the distancing, but on the back part of that property, it looked like there was, I don't know if it's an old stone retaining wall or like part of an old foundation that's kind of like up against the slope on the back part of that property. Is that
It's,
proposed to be taken out? Is that going to stay?
if it's within the limit of the erosion control that you see here now, then it would be cleared out. I mean,
On
great.
the plan?
It's not shown on the plan.
Yeah, it was kind of like almost right in the slope. It looked like
Yeah.
it may have been a wall of some kind to keep that up.
Because there was an old structure that was in here with a driveway inside.
Mhm.
So that was demoed. So whatever's within that footprint, that would all be taken out.
Okay.
The only thing left is just going to be vegetation. So there is no work proposed beyond the limit of what you see here.
Has anybody taken a look at that wetlands? I know we can't go on the property.
So I did take a look at the wetlands from the road. I believe that the GIS is extremely incorrect. I believe it actually travels a lot closer to the edge of the road than
That was my concern.
when you go out there. Amanda saw it as well. We were looking at it. There was a lot of, what was the tree that you saw?
There's a lot of white pine, which white pine is not in and of itself a wetland tree, but it does tend to grow on the border of wetland areas.
There was a lot of standing water. It was kind of difficult because of the time of year we're looking at it. But I did notice some ferns, with like sensitive fern out there. but you could even see, just looking at the hummocks, the way that the tree's roots were standing, it did look like it got wetter a lot farther out than what the GIS is showing, which is typical. GIS isn't an accurate depiction. Mr. Mission, when I spoke to Justin about this project, I did ask you guys to reach out to the Mazzaferros, stating them, because I do know they're fairly reasonable to work with.
Yep. So the Mazzaferros were contacted as part of the previous approval as well.
10 years ago, right?
No, it was 10 years
Yeah.
ago, yeah, agreed. And they didn't want us on the property. They didn't want the wetlands flag in their property. And, you know, we didn't fight back and push back. And even now, because of the edge of the roadway, you know, I'm not a wetland scientist, you know, but I've been doing this for a long time. And from the edge of roadway, you know, this being a 20 scale plan, you know, yes, up here on this edge of the property, it's within, you know, probably 10 feet or so from the roadway, from what I could visualize as what could be a vegetated wetland, you know, not standing water and open water. And it does get closer as you come further down the road here, but, you know, even if it is 10 to 20 feet off, you know, 24-foot roadway, you know, plus the room for the right of way, you're still the wetland's still at least 50 feet or more from the property line. So impact-wise, we're still really only looking at vegetation and grading within the buffer zone on the other side of the street. You know, there's no, you know, possibility or probability of any indirect impacts to the wetland as a result of this. You know, so it just seems to us that whether this wetland line is 10 feet closer, 5 feet closer, however closer, it's still on the opposite side of the roadway. And it's still on a previously developed site.
So where I'm saying that there's actually wetland going farther out
Down this way.
down the property, which I believe would put where the houses are, possibly, or where your grading is,
Yeah.
into the buffer zone.
I mean, scale-wise, 100 feet still puts us, you know, to the corner of the house. It would still have to be within 10 feet of that roadway on the backside.
And the thing is, once we approve this, we're approving the wetland delineation as well. So I don't want to, you know, if we're not comfortable with the delineation, now, you know, somebody else can use this delineation.
I don't believe so, just because they are saying that they
We're not
never did
delineating.
delineation.
This is GIS, this is not a wetland
Yeah.
delineation.
My main concern is I would be hesitant to do this under an RDA, because you can only condition RDAs so far. You cannot enforce them. Once it's issued, it's issued.
Right.
So where I believe the wetland extends a lot further out and down the road, because the road kind of goes, that's like a little V shape. It goes a lot closer to the railroad lines on the opposite side. It is concerning to me as to where the wetland property is, and we all know how projects can go even across the street from the wetland, how it still can impact the wetland. A lot of the water looks like it's sloped that way.
We've had several in North Leominster that did that.
Yeah. And so I'm a little concerned about site, mainly because we don't know where the wetland is, as well as, you said there's dry wells for the stormwater permit. You're doing dry wells?
It's just a shake concrete, you know,
Okay.
concrete structure. It's a 5-foot diameter structure.
Or there's already, you know, stormwater permit going to be going through for it.
But I don't want, I'm not trying to force your hand, but again, the wetlands are off the property. We don't have the right to access the property. Permission was asked previously. We didn't physically go and talk to them for this one, but the landowner told us we couldn't. So I don't know what conversations he's had with them. And again, it's not on our property, it's across the street. It just seems like this is, you know, a notice of intent for something like this. You can still condition an RDA.
But you can't enforce it. Legally, you can't.
Legally, you can't enforce it. You know, we've been to planning board, we've talked to building department, DPW. They've gotten their approvals. We know we're on board. And regardless, we are on the hook for control of the site while we're not building it. But
Yeah.
you know, Boucher, when they go to construct it, they are on the hook. If there's a erosion problem, it is enforceable. You call the town, the DPW gets certainly, or any jurisdiction in town, if it's impacting the wetlands, you have the right to react and have enforcement action. You know,
So the whole point of this process is to avoid that. You don't want to have to react with enforcement. And I think just where we don't know where the wetland line is, we don't have a firm agreement where it is, as well as the property next to it and behind it was very wet when me and Amanda went out there.
Where you find out here?
That whole area was very wet, but also the property actually directly next door to it. Behind it, there was a steep slope and like a gully. I believe I sent some pictures to everybody that I took off that, from the roadway. There's a buildup in between the two properties. I just have where we don't know where the wetland is, and typically, even if it is across the roadway, you're still in the buffer zone, you're still doing site work in the buffer zone. The commission still typically asks for an NOI and that kind of piece.
So, was anybody contacted on the property where the wetland is for this project?
For this project, not through McCarty. The property owner, the project developer, said they've talked to them. And that it's off the property, they don't want the wetlands flagged on the property. For whatever reason, develop in the future, impacting their property.
But do you know if so not through McCarty, but the company that bought this property, do you know if they spoke to them for,
As far as we know,
for this project about it? So, yeah, again, we're not here to try to make your lives harder. We're not here to try to tell you that you can't do the project that you want to do. I personally don't have a problem with the redevelopment of that site. I think right now it looks like it's been used as like a dumping ground for a while. Like you said, it's been vacant for a really long time. I think this would go a long way to just make things look a lot better. When we were out there, it did look like a significantly larger portion of that area was wet. So a lot of the times, and I have a lot of experience doing this as well, it's obviously no fault of your own if you're not allowed to go onto private property. We get that. What a lot of people will ask for is, in an instance like that, we would just want the property line of that property across the street to just act as the wetland barrier, because we don't know. And that can cause problems. That's my personal opinion. It's what I have done in the past. When you don't have access to a site, it's obvious that there is a wetland there and you have no idea where the line actually goes. Typically, you would use the property line of that property, because otherwise there's no way to tell. And it's really just so that we know how much of this project is impacting the buffer zone, especially because of the amount of earthwork that has to be done. I think that's really my only concern. I don't know what others' opinions are.
And I don't think it takes away from, I don't think it's gonna take away from the project happening. I think it's just, I think it's a better approach for something that, is that close to a wetland. We don't have, that's a significant amount of work. Like you said, if something happens and you lose that, it impacts the wetland. We've seen it happen where, hay bales and silt fence fail during heavy rain. It just travels across the road. The little, hitch in the road isn't going to stop that large volume of material going into. So if this area here is wetland and you lose this section here,
But I mean, as a developer, landowner, he's required to clean it up anyway. So I mean,
Not if it's not on his property. Not if it's not on his property, he can't clean it up without their permission.
he can't even enter the property. So,
I did have this discussion with Justin, and I did explain it to him when he came to meet with me. I really think that this should be done under an NOI.
Well, how can you force us to flag a wetland if it's on someone else's property?
No one's forcing you to flag a wetland.
Well, then how would we come back with an NOI? We don't have a real wetland.
You'd have to use the property line.
Use the property
But
line.
then that's,
Or you can use the line you have still, but it does seem to be farther. Where we don't know where the wetland line is, I don't think we should issue a deal.
someone that's comfortable with, wetlands, a wetland scientist can do a certain amount of investigation from the road and make some estimate, you know, can look at the ground and look at the plants and say, based on topology, based on the water levels, based on, you know, the plants, you know, or the trees, you know, this is an estimate of, you know, and carry it beyond that one point that is listed. You know, if it appears that the wetland goes on further,
You can say this is our estimate as well as you did already file an NOI without knowing where the wetland line was, so.
But in the fact that the work is so limited on this project, like this is significantly less of an impact than was proposed before. It's simply grading. It's simply
I mean,
grading. That's all
it's
it
still
is.
grading, yes, it is grading,
But
but
that's
still,
it, that's-
civil
that's-
grading sites can still cause
But that's,
damage to the
I
wetland. across the
understand
road.
that, but I mean, a grading site on a bigger development can cause a significant amount. It's not a big site, it's not a big project, there's not a lot of earthwork going on here. There really isn't. Looking grade-wise, you know, you're gonna have 6 feet of fill in the back, but it's purely fill compacted, you know, stabilized and with a hay bale barrier on the bottom. I don't know, just seems like it's a simple, very simple project. It's across the street from a wetland. It was a previously developed site, you know, and there is a full 24-foot roadway through it as well. That's another barrier. You know, there are multiple barriers here that would prevent any type of washout or runoff from leaving the site to get to the wetland. You know, and we did, like I said, I know I'm not a soil scientist, you know, but I've been a professional engineer for 20 years now. And going on the property, walking down the street, seeing what's out there, the wetlands are not up to the roadway. You know, they're just not, so whether it's 10 feet or 20 feet, it's still, yes, it puts the buffer zone on the property, but it's certainly not going to envelop the buildings or any of the foundations. So it was, you know, the owner's, the applicant's preference to just have an RDA. You know, it is a cost for permitting, you know, in time for development. Like I said, he has all his other permits in hand, which was kind of the last step in the process.
I did send you guys pictures of where that, you can kind of see where that concrete wall is that's inside the slope. I believe it's a lot farther up than where the erosion controls are. I don't believe it would be sustainable to build on top of it. You kind of, I'm just trying to see if you can see.
You see it's further up?
There. I mean, I can show the condition picture on my phone as well. I did send it to all your phones.
It's hard to tell if it is.
Oh, just there, it's right here. But you can kind of see there's, in there you can see there's a cement wall that goes along there. It looks like, I would say it probably, right up with this. Driveway. I would say it's probably up in this area.
So it is within the building.
It's hard to see it. It's like
Between the
it's
excavated
down here.
Yeah, that's the significant excavation that's gonna be a lot farther down than what you have.
This is the.
Because that wall goes into the slope and is holding the entire slope up, so you're gonna have to take that wall, you're gonna have to remove a
Yeah, but-
significant amount of this.
But it's up in the building footprint area where they're going to be excavating for foundations anyway.
Which, yes, but that also shows that that's another possible impact. If that's like a steep slope, it's gonna be a high amount of soil removal and excavation, and you're also gonna have to remove all those trees that are holding the banking up.
But that's within this fill area. This whole area of the backside is going to be filled.
Yes, which I believe that area is actually the buffer zone, because I believe the GIS, which is highly inaccurate, that's part of the buffer zone.
Let me ask you a question. If pretend the other side of the road is the wetland line.
Yep.
Does it touch the houses, or the actual construction of them?
Grab the scale.
Because that, I mean, if that's what, I mean, at some point, you know, erosion controls are really the major concern, is making sure that nothing leaves that site. And that can, if that's the only concern, realistically, erosion controls can be, those can be managed anyway. So it's a, you know, I mean, it can be managed from a NOI, it can be done through an RDA, erosion controls.
I have no right to go, after we issue a DOA, I don't have a right to go on the property and inspect erosion controls, even if it is a special condition, we'd have to go through an enforcement process.
So if you're using the property line as a buffer zone, this building right here would, this corner of this building would be 100 foot. see here to here, so right to basically this corner, to this corner. Basically that. This corner will go, okay. Can you see right?
Yeah. I mean, if we don't have the right to be on the property, once the if it's an RDA, I guess that would be a concern. I guess if there was an enforcement action, we wouldn't actually be able to enter the property to do an inspection or any of that.
As long as it's not recorded on the deed, RDAs or DOAs are typically not recorded on the deed. So any successor buying wouldn't know that they couldn't fill in that back lot. Back portion of the lot, I should say, affecting the wetland area.
Well, while we're sitting here, I'm going to open up to the public real quick. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak about this project? Second time? Third and final time? All right, I'm going to keep the comment period open right now, but does anybody want to look at the site? Is there any discussion? How do people feel about this?
You can't go on the property across the street.
No, we can look from the road.
The road, but it's all snow covered. Tough time.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be helpful for you guys if we're having trouble agreeing on what we want to do. It might be helpful for you guys just to see this particular lot and see if that, just what you think about it as far as it's the prospect of something actually happening and going across the street. It's really hard to imagine the way that this lot looks just by looking at the plan. And like I said, I certainly don't want to sit here and give you guys a hard time for no reason. That's not the job of this commission. Our job is just to make sure that the few resource areas that we actually do have are protected, and that's why we have the Wetlands Protection Act. So I think it probably would behoove you guys to take a look at it in person, just because even if it's just the actual lot that the stuff is being done on, and if we still feel that, like, if the buffer zone even comes out further, it's really still not going to change anything, then we're not having extra work done that doesn't need to be done.
Because I feel like without going back onto this property and getting an actual delineation or flagging, no matter how many times we will look at it, we're going to be in the same position. Where we don't have the exact flagging line.
I agree.
We don't have the exact buffer zone line. It's all going to come back down to the limited amount of work that's happening here, the type of work. If it's strictly earthwork that's going on in here, you say you can't condition it or limited conditions, but we can certainly agree here to add double layers of hay bale, silk fence, or just do whatever would kind of make you feel more comfortable if there is extra added protection out here. And it's a visible site, it's right in the corner. It's not something that's going to be happening out in the back of someone's property where you'll never see it. It's very visible. And anything that does happen here, if there was a blowout or something, you're good. You'll find out that day from people driving the site.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, it's a very low risk project. It's a very low risk type of activity that's happening here to generate any type of sediment. We'd certainly be agreeable to adding a second layer of silt fence and hay bale. Just something if that's what's going to make you feel. Because say the buffer zone is further on the property. It seems like there's really not much more that would change on this plan at all.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern is just stabilization. of the area. And the reason I say that is because my house was built last year, and we have it was built into the backside of a hillside. We have a pretty significant slope, even though it was landscaped, and I don't have a wetland at the base of it. It's just some woods, but we did get heavy rain before the grass had a chance to hit, and we had this just gully running down the slope. And so that's really my biggest concern. I think regardless of what we do, if we could do another layer of silt fence on the property line at the base of that slope,
Sure.
I think would definitely go a long way. Just because that is personally my biggest concern, is just that the backside of that, even if you're not doing anything to it, it's a pretty steep slope, and with this now becoming like a manicured lawn, water's going to travel across it easier and stuff like that. So I would, stabilization is the main concern. So
And I think, maintaining this vegetation at the time here does add
yeah,
another significant buffer to it, that it is vegetated, there are trees, there are roots.
right. And then just if that added layer of, properly installed silt fence, I will say, because I've seen silt fence just sort of staked in. It doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, you don't
You
trench
really
it.
need to trench it and make sure that it's
So it is with walls.
that it's down in there. I think is super important.
But we could easily add a second layer.
So, just my concern, this, as I've already said, is that you really shouldn't be conditioning a determination of applicability. It's much more difficult to enforce that, as well as McCarty and Jeremy may say, oh yeah, we have no problem doing that, but they're not the ones who are going to be doing the work as we move this
But
project.
adding it to the plan.
But what's going to make them follow that? And that's the main concern, is that as well as, we see this on countless other projects where, even though it is across the road from the wetland, we still need to take it seriously, because we know how bad that can happen. We know how bad that rainstorm, we know how bad a pile of dirt in the middle of the road can get. Oh, we're just gonna put this here real quick, no big deal, it's gonna wash out. So they're gonna go out to lunch, and they're gonna hit a rainstorm. I think for projects that, even if they're in the buffer zone's a highly important area for the ecosystems, even if it's across the street, that's water. We're gonna have water going out the back of those houses, all down that slope. We're also gonna have to deal with, they're gonna be able to sell those houses or townhouses. People are gonna be able to move in before anything's stabilized. They're not gonna have to get certificate of compliance. The people who are buying those properties are not gonna have any knowledge of the history of the property, which we know how serious and how frustrating that can be for those homeowners. As well as we don't even know where the wetland is. So at this point, in my opinion, it's better to just be more cautious and protect future homeowners, protect the resource area. They've already done an NOI for the project, basically a little bit different. I don't see, and when I consulted with the state, Carrie, they said basically, as soon as there's site work, even in the buffer zone, it really, if you're going to condition it, it really should be done under an order of conditions. Especially if there's going to be a stormwater permit as well.
Personally, I've driven by it a lot, several times, but usually on the high side. So I'd like to take a look at it, take a closer look. Seems like it's kind of mixed, so if you want to go back and see, if this came in as an NOI and we had the ability to, monitor and enforce and everything, I would have voted for this tonight.
Okay.
So, but I think our hands are tied with some of the things that we can do to, monitor and protect, if there is an issue, all we can do is give you a cease and desist. Or not you, but, the property owner. And there's a lot of things, with a notice of intent, we can work to keep the project moving and just, put up a few hay bales and silt fence to keep moving, Otherwise, we gotta, do a cease and desist, we gotta go through a whole process. It could be a couple of months before we even, and in the meantime, you're not building. But, I'll take a look, Paul said he can take a look before the next meeting.
I'll be down there tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock if you want. Nice to be retired.
If you want to go there, if you want us to come with you, if you want to attend, I can certainly do that.
So do we ask him for a continuance?
Do you want to continue to the next, with the next meeting, the 28th, next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday?
Yeah. Okay.
Right, I'll walk it before then.
All right, and I'll get on it.
Yep.
Thank you.
We're all here to walk on down there.
Yes, we're gonna, it's on the steep slopes, we wanna park on
The
the,
other one's right.
yeah, the one across the road, we might wanna park on the Litchfield Street side, so we're very steep slope walking down. You
Yes,
guys
park on the high side.
Yeah, that was fun.
All right, so we're back to Central Street?
Yes.
Do I have to, so we're gonna reopen the, hearing for 199-1104, 1341 Central Street.
Hi.
Hey, we're ready for you.
I gotta apologize, I had a hernia operation yesterday. I got some ice on my leg.
We have Trooper for being here.
I'm sure. My name is Dave Sadowski. I'm the principal of Sadowski Engineering. Along with me is Mr. Lucina, the applicant, or actually the owner of the property, has purchased the property. We've been before the commission already, before Brad Stone was the chair. Mr. Stone was the chair the last time we were here. We had submitted stormwater report, stormwater checklist, hydrology report, drainage report, wetlands delineation report. Do you all have those packages? They were hand-delivered?
Yep.
You reviewed them?
I think I've seen them.
They are on the drive as well as I did. He did get paper copies. I just
Okay.
scanned them in for everybody. I had a chance to review them.
Yeah, they probably were submitted about 5 weeks ago.
So the copies you guys looking at were submitted right around Christmas time. The only comments, there wasn't really particularly anything. The only comments I had was that they didn't check off on the stormwater checklist that they did not use low impact development techniques. But that's not major. It's not really applicable for this site. And then there was a comment about illicit discharge. That also was not applicable for this site.
We also, Paul McManus was here at the last meeting, and he explained how this was an intermittent stream. He explained the area that would be used was .12, the contributing area to wetland that would actually form into that type of growth. We received our file number from DEP without any comments.
Can you do me a favor? Can you just put a plan up? Or I'll do it. You don't have to get up.
You guys all have a copy of the plan. It would be in better condition than mine.
This is for the TV, for the camera. They like to zoom in on it as we're
Sure.
talking about it.
Could we use one of your
Oh,
plans that
here,
was submitted?
there, just use this one.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. I got a double
no,
edged
yeah.
bag on.
Thank you.
I guess I had one question. It isn't major. I just noticed it says here standard time prohibition of illicit discharges. And then under that, you guys wrote that you guys were going to have illicit discharges on the site. Could you just explain that to the commission?
I don't know why we would have had all this.
I think it was an error.
I think it was a typo error for sure.
Because it says floor drains, industrial sanitary wastewater will be allowed on the site. Sanitary waste wall will be discharged to the proposed soil absorption system. So I just wanted to make sure that, because it kind of reads funny if you're not.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that there will be no illicit discharge on the site.
No, there won't be.
That's what I figured.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
Don't worry. I think it is just the way.
I think it's the way that Alton wrote it.
Yeah, which is
The
the
language.
way he wrote it is correct. It's just if it's the average eye, it looks. You're like, wait a minute, will be
I
allowed?
think he likes to write in Old English.
Do we want to have that corrected though? We don't want to have something checked that shouldn't be.
Well,
It says that it will be discharged into the proposed soil absorption system, which is not an illicit discharge because it wouldn't be discharged immediately.
It's just the verbiage, I
It's
believe.
just the way it was written. It was a little confusing. I just wanted him to clarify so we had it for the meeting minutes. And then one other comment I had is that, as part part of the stormwater, it said sand and road salt will be stored in the facility building and not in the parking lot. I just recommend that the commission make that also a special condition so that whoever, when they have it, it'll be on the special conditions that it has to be stored inside the building. It's just a special condition, a suggestion. Yes.
That actually sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, just, you know how it is, everyone always skips over all the good stuff and goes to the end anyways.
We wanted to protect it by putting it inside because Mr.
that's what it
Lucina
says,
lives
yes.
about a half a mile from the site. It's perfect for him, and he's gonna run his company out of there for as long as he's in there.
Hopefully
Yeah, I'm
forever.
not building this to sell and look freaking
Yeah,
out.
you're gonna be there.
Yeah.
But I think it's to help us put that as a special condition.
Okay. Are there any questions from the commission? Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to comment on this project? Second time? Third and final time? How do we feel about this? Should we close the comment period? You feel comfortable voting tonight?
Oh, did you have anything?
Did you? I'll leave it open for right now.
Do we have the information for DH 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Are those outside the 100-foot buffer? Are they part of your jurisdictions there?
Where you're going to be putting a septic system in?
Correct. Also, I talked to Christopher Newton. He said if you'd like to come down and discuss with him, he actually was out observing the testing. The forms are down there for Form 11A percolation forms.
You submitted a proposal, there's a map in front of me that shows DH 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd like to see the information.
It's also in your package and some other maps, but I'll show you if you'd actually open up the other one.
They're right here. If you do go through your package, you should have the septic plan prior to the filing. And they're well outside the 100-foot buffer. That's not it. It'd be a full 2436. Could I take over?
This is the entire packet right here.
Well, I think nothing underneath. You have the other plan?
So which other plans? Ones
There was a
that-
plan that originally when we first submitted, I submitted a septic plan.
Yes, those are on the Google Drive, Paul. He didn't bring the copies for everyone, so those ones are on the Google Drive.
At one point, we all have them. Take a look at mine. Here's the results right here.
All right. I just wanted to see the results.
Sure. They're probably 130 to 150 feet from the wetlands. You're welcome.
So I just want to clarify for the record, even though these holes were done out of the wetland, they are still technically jurisdictional because they will impact the resource area. So something can be 200 feet away from the resource area, but if you're going to impact the resource area from runoff, from storm, from disturbance, from increasing the impervious on the site, it does fall under our jurisdiction.
All right. I agree with that, but just for the record to the chair, I'd like to say that with the finished grading that's associated with the septic system plan, breakout cannot occur. That's why we finish grade further out. And our finished grading is outside the 100-foot buffer in this case. So anything that's going to be going down will be going straight down to the water table. Much like, I guess you could say someone 500 feet away would be impacting the resource area too, but our
I'm saying this
particular
is on
one.
the plan, he just wanted to review it.
Okay, I'm just saying though, for the record, since we're being taped, that none of the finished grading that's going to control any type of breakout is within the 100-foot buffer line, as shown on the plans. Did Mr. Stone run any calculations, or did he check the hydrology and everything?
It's not on the commission any longer. so-
Oh, is it? All right.
tonight? What is it?
No further questions.
I'm gonna then go ahead and close the public comment period. All right, is there any discussion on this project? Any recommendation?
Yes, I recommend the condition we spoke about earlier, of having the salt and sand as a special condition, as well as our typical boilerplate conditions that are also added on. And let's choose the other conditions that they'd like to add.
Is there anyone that would like to make that recommendation or another?
I will, I'll make a recommendation that we issue an order of conditions for DEP file number 199-1104 with our standard boilerplate, and the added condition that sand and salt storage be inside the building and not outside.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you so much for your time. I know you're volunteers. Thank you very much for serving the city.
So we went through all our hearings here. My eyes are... No, I think we're good. So we're going to move on to the regular meeting. Okay. We
Can we
good?
skip ahead to the $30 the bill have enforcement issue? Just because it seems to be easy.
Yeah, that's
Sure. Yep.
Not just here for my good looks.
You didn't want to just hang out with us tonight?
Yeah, you know, that's what we work, you know?
It's fun.
Yeah. Good.
So just a refresher for everyone, this is the one I received. Notice that there's been work been doing on the riverfront. There is a perennial stream that runs along Mr. Boscoville, Mr. Payne's property. Paul and myself have gone out there and looked. And at last, we were all kind of undecided because it does look like it's also on the Leominster Land Trust property. I've been trying to make contact with Mr. Paventi, his son, as well as his engineer, Mr. Bill Hannigan. I spoke with Bill about it, and kind of his recommendation was, just have him remove whatever's there. They're not going to give him a hard time, but they're not going to go out there and survey the land right now. Mr. Paventi wasn't a high priority. So it's really up to the commission. My recommendation in my conversations, you're willing to do the work, you're willing to take everything out.
Yeah.
Has the health department contacted you about the fill?
No.
I have to follow, because of the fill and the material in it, the health department does have to be alerted just because there's, it's from a different site, it has asphalt, cement, and other.
No, there's no,
in it.
no, the asphalt was from when the plows
From
pushed
when
over the
the
curb.
curving, okay.
Yeah,
I
the
can't
concrete
remember.
was there when I moved in, so,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm just trying to clean it up.
Yeah, so I
But
think.
I will pull it out, whatever I gotta do.
Yeah, so my recommendation is, instead of making Mr. Payne file an NOI, going through the whole process for something he wasn't error, he didn't, no offense, he didn't know any better, he didn't know, he can still do the work under an enforcement order. So we issued an enforcement order for him to to restore, sorry, to restore the area, to remove the fill that was added. I think that would be the best way to get it done as soon as possible, as well as without, this is the easiest way to get it done.
I didn't add any fill up top.
Yeah.
I was just on the left-hand side.
Yeah, just the left-hand side, just to take out whatever was added in.
Yeah,
And then just plant some vegetation.
On the left-hand side? So I gotta put a
Wait,
big
left-hand
hole?
side of your driveway?
Yeah, if you're going on my driveway, the left-hand side, that was 4 feet.
No, the left-hand side isn't near, just the side,
Oh, the right-hand side.
just the right-hand side where all of the, where the
Yeah,
stream
yeah,
is.
yep.
And then the fill that kind of goes over, just
Okay,
kind of
that's where
pull it out.
that's where I got
dispose of it
lazy and
properly.
just kind of kicked it off.
Yeah, just pull that out.
Can I put riprap along that to save my driveway from sinking?
I think that would be reasonable as long as there's vegetation at the base of the riprap.
I
as long
can
as
put,
you get some
I can
wetland
loam
seed.
over it. I can loam over the riprap
Yeah.
and seed that afterwards.
I think
That's
just,
fine.
yeah, just because when you have an asphalt driveway that way, that close to the stream, what happens is the water, I don't believe it's a cold water fishery, but the water heats up as it goes across the cement when it
Oh,
rains,
okay.
and it kind of goes in there and it kind of
All right.
adds chemical pollutants. So it would be great to have riprap in there to catch any pollutants as well as grass. I think that's a great
And I'm
idea.
gonna have the driveway redone.
Which is
correct?
exact, because it's already paved.
Okay, so I don't have to go in front of
As
you
long
guys
as you're
again?
not expanding it, or
Nope.
adding more onto it, it's
Nope.
exempt because it's an already
Just that little
existing
turnout
driveway.
right there on the left-hand side, on the other side.
Yeah, that was existing, so.
Okay, all right.
That's my recommendation, is to kind of, not that we don't love seeing you here, but just kind of get it
I'll
over
just go and
with.
visit, that's cool.
Yeah,
Nice meeting
call me,
you.
we can put it in, to remove, fill added, restore area, add riprap and loam and seed, work with the agent. I can go out there and inspections over the spring and summer when you get started.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna get on it right away, I mean, if I can.
Yeah,
Well, not now, because
everything's,
everything's.
not right now, but
Can I fill in that hole in the backyard too, that we talked about?
remember the sinkhole
I
in
do
the back
remember
court?
By the shed?
Yeah,
I believe that was out of the 200-foot area.
that's close. I mean, my house is 20 feet away from that stream. I don't know how you ever got a permit to begin with, but it'll be the same thing, I'll put a loam and seed it, same day.
Under 5,000, yeah. He wants disturbance, because after you hit 5,000 square feet of disturbance, it triggers the storm, like
Yeah,
disturbance.
it's not 5,000.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was on the corner was in the back corner
Way
of the
left
property.
corner, yeah, there's no
I
access.
really think it's out of the 200-foot buffer
Yeah.
zone.
Okay.
I can look through the measuring tape, if you're okay with that.
I can measure for it.
I mean, I really think it was,
Yeah, it's
An
close,
hour,
it's right
200
before the line.
He's gonna work under enforcement.
yeah, it's working under enforcement order.
So just do that last, you'll be out there before then anyways.
Yeah, so if we just do that last, working on the enforcement order, I'll go out there, we can measure it, and then if it requires more permitting, I don't think it will, but if it does, then we can go over that
Okay,
at the time.
awesome, so I can rip wrap that side,
Yeah, riprap, loam, seed,
loam, seed,
flowers.
rip out all the stuff that the city put in over there, well, whoever did.
I'm trying, I have no idea who did it.
Yeah, we're not gonna blame any names. Rip it out, and then loam and seed.
I think
And where's that
that's,
stuff gonna go?
do you have somewhere to dispose of it?
Yeah, probably just my work, yeah,
Okay.
so, the Tamarello,
I was like, I remember you worked first.
yeah,
Yeah,
construction
so
company.
construction
Yeah.
company.
And I'm just gonna drop it off at the site, I don't know if you need an actual, I'm not gonna dump it anywhere. I'm already gonna find people again, I'm not gonna dump it anywhere shady, trust me.
Or watching you.
Yeah. Said next to cameras next to my house.
No.
No, I need cameras, there's people breaking into houses down there.
Oh, no,
Yeah,
I'm so sorry to
yeah.
hear that.
Yep.
So that would be my advice, if the commission supports that. If we want to give him, what day of the year is it? January, February, March. If we want to give him maybe until, let's say June of next year, just so we can, or maybe even July of next year, just so we can get some growth in, to have it all completed. Do you think that's reasonable?
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to set deadlines.
I was thinking July of this year, August this year.
Yeah, well, I hope that's just kind of give it some growth, like 2 seasons of
Okay.
growth. We want to have that just for root
Okay.
stability. That would be my recommendation.
And after I seed up top there, is there a special type of seed you want me to use, or just regular grass seed?
I believe it was at the top there. It looked like it was probably just grass.
Yeah, it was,
So if the commission wants them to use a wetland mix, that's up to I think just loam and seed would be fine, just to stabilize it. I think it was all pretty disturbed from the development being put in anyways.
I mean, it's a grass area anyway.
yeah, it was
Putting
grass.
a wetland mix isn't really.
Yeah, it's not gonna
really
house
any
is
benefit.
fine.
So regular grass, regular seed's fine.
Yeah, I would, just so you're aware, I would just limit your fertilizer, because the fertilizer will wash into the water on that side.
I won't use any fertilizer.
Like, I'm sure you don't have a problem over there, but just so,
Yeah,
I just wanted
yeah,
to state it
yeah.
for,
And it'll just be like, you'll let it go after that, or?
yeah, I think because it is right along his driveway, I think you may have to do some maintenance, some trimming, you don't wanna have ticks or anything right along your
Yeah, yeah.
driveway, you don't wanna have.
It overgrows real bad on the right-hand side. You asked me
The
about
right,
it.
yeah, the right-hand side, yeah,
But I think I can limit that by putting the riprap there and some loam and seed.
because
You know?
we leave us all like
I'll
Virginia
put, I'll use
paper,
like a fescue or something
cards.
over there, you know,
Yeah.
something that doesn't overgrow. All right,
Right,
so we're good.
do you guys wanna vote on issuing the enforcement order?
Yes, I should do that.
I guess. I'm really tired.
Yeah.
So anyone
I've been up
wants to
since
make
4,
that
I don't know
motion?
about you.
I will make the motion that we issue enforcement for 30 Basketball Lane with all of the both
bullet points that our agent just laid out. Giving until, what are you saying, summer 2021 for it to be fully completed.
Well, we would probably want to do it like by like July of this year to get the, and then
Yes.
give it a growing season.
Yeah, that was,
To be
yeah, so we
finalized,
can do
so-
July.
I'll call you when I get capped and see it
Okay.
raked out, so then you can by and check it out, and
Yeah.
see the work. And I'll leave the silt fence up, I'll even extend it a little further, because I think it kinda got too tired and I didn't wanna put any more
No,
in.
maybe.
So I'll even extend that a little further, so I know they got a little bit left, so. You're all set with me?
Second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you
Have a
very
good
much.
night. Thanks, appreciate it.
Thank you.
There's still more meeting, you don't have to go anywhere.
No, I'm good, I'm starving.
New business?
Oh, no new business at this time, sorry, I got confused.
Certificates of compliance.
All right, so the first one is 20 Nats Farm Road, DEP file number 1991007. This project was completed, it's off of, I believe it's Jocelyn Street and Day Street in that area. There's a whole subdivision up there. We recently issued an order of conditions for the 26 Nats Farm Road. 20 Nats Farm Road looks like it's been completed for a while. Unfortunately, because of the snow and just the way my schedule, I haven't seen the site when it was stabilized. I believe it probably is stabilized at this point in time, because I remember seeing it over the summer and looking over and going, oh, it looks so nice. But I didn't get a chance to see it since having this COC request turned in.
Okay.
So I don't
So
know if we
we-
want to continue that until, just continue it until maybe February. Check for growth next time we have a nice 70-degree day. And then the next one, which is 26 Ness Farm Road, DEP number 1991078. They turned in the COC request with a request to continue until the spring, because the way that the building department is issuing occupancy permits for new built house that have order conditions is they're holding the occupancy permit until they get their COC. They're trying to help us clean up our files, they're trying to help the homeowners. They've seen what kind of damage it does historically and how many problems it causes, which is really, really great for them to do that for us. But this house, unfortunately, everything was done, and it's slightly vegetated, but it's not fully vegetated, and they had homeowners and it was holding up the sale of the house because of the title search. So what what we did was, I met with the new homeowners, we discussed it, I went over the order of condition of them, I explained to them, yes, you can put a garden up, you can build a garden, but no, you can't pave your backyard. Like, we went over the whole spiel and how to protect the wetlands, and if they have any issues, who to call. As well as they have a signed affidavit, saying that they understand the order conditions. So they were able to, and then I said you have to turn in the request for the COC. So we have that ready to go when the spring, once everything's growing in, before I'll give the building department my okay. So they turned in their request. Hannigan Engineering is waiting until the spring to go back out there, so it's a draft request for this time. But I figured that was just the best way to be accommodating, as well as get everything done that we need to get done.
Now, can these be continued to a certain date so they don't have to sit on the, or no, we don't want it to get
I'm
lost?
just gonna leave them on for my own clerical. I'm just gonna put just like for 3-4
Yeah, put a note
away.
though, like continued until,
Yeah, continue until
till
spring.
all right, it looks like we did Lock Drive, so 3 Royal Oaks Way, continued to the spring.
Until the spring, until they have growth in that area.
All right, so moving on, extension permits we took care of, communications.
Yes, so our scribe, Diana Richards, she has resigned from the position. So I advertised and I hooked, line, and sinkered Mr. Michael Huffman to be our scribe. His wife works for the city, and he has experience doing meeting minutes with her. He's also done it a couple other times. Also, he's home during the day, so he has the time to kind of dedicate to it, and he's very interested in it. I've spoken to him many times just about the Conservation Commission. Unfortunately, he doesn't live in Leominster, otherwise I make him be a member. But he's really looking forward to working with us and working on our backlog of meeting minutes.
Okay.
So, welcome, Michael.
All All right, so we got some meeting minutes. Now, how does this work? Well, if Brad can't vote,
Yeah, Brad couldn't vote
So-
anyways.
so it doesn't matter.
Sam, at this point, the meeting minutes technically are public record. I think it's just good for housekeeping for us to vote them in. Did anyone have any issues with them?
No.
Okay.
We're not officially voting it.
Yeah, let's do it one by one. Do you want to lead, Larry? You don't need to lead,
Yeah.
sorry.
Well, I don't know if I'm supposed to make a motion. So do I have a motion for the meeting minutes for 9/24/2019?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes for September 24, 2019 as written.
I'll second.
All in favor? Motion passes. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a motion to accept the minutes for July 16th, 2019, not 219,
I'm sorry. You just saw that.
as written.
It's like you're-
I wasn't around in 219.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Did you see the next one?
Opposed?
No, I just did.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I will make a third motion to accept the minutes of October 8th, 2019, not 2109 in the future,
I will second that.
as written.
I second.
All in favor? Opposed?
You've done that
Motion
for us,
passes.
so-
All right.
I apologize. I
That's
did.
I do things like that all the time.
Wonderful. Something is the number key on my new
Call
computer. Yep.
I think we're gonna need a bigger font on these.
Yeah.
So, all right, so enforcement, we have 9 Penny Lane.
And that's
Continue. 30 Bosville, we took care of. Move on to emergency certifications. Are there any?
not this time.
Not this time. Project update requests. Is there anyone that has any requests?
I have a comment. We received a superseding order of conditions on 644 Pleasant Street. Is that the right address?
Yes.
And I read the rationale of DEP, and I contacted our agent about appealing the superseding order, but apparently there was no support to go ahead and do that. I was somewhat disappointed. I think the night that we spent a lot of time looking at intermittent versus perennial, we rejected that order of job based on the fact that we stood our ground on the perennial stream, only to find out that the DEP comes along and overrules us, which isn't very supportive in the first place. But then we don't stand up to bat to stick up for what we did. So I just wanted to comment on it and say how disappointed I was that we didn't make that appeal.
Paul, I apologize. I don't want you to feel disappointed. But so I did have a conversation actually with DEP on 2 occasions, and Brad also called. And they really had a tough time with this superseding order conditions. They went back and forth. They consulted other agencies, I guess, because technically, by the full technical terms of the regulations, Ms. Giovannucci was correct. Legally, in our mind, and I don't want to say common sense, but common sense, it wasn't correct. It's a perennial stream. And the thing that kind of stinks is that the older USGS maps showed it as a map perennial stream, and now it doesn't. But unfortunately, it could go either way if we went to adjunctatory hearing. And so, I know Mr. Stone, I believe, is already reaching out to USGS to have them correct the maps.
Yep.
And once they correct it, then it would be considered a perennial stream. They'd have to come back and prove it with the next permit, if ever they decided to do. As well as I'm going to write a letter requesting them to correct and take a look at this, because it is an error on their part that's affecting a resource area. And right now, I think we could go through the process with the adjunctory hearing, and I was fully ready to do it if the commissioners had, a majority of the commissioners had voiced a concern to do so. But I wonder if this may just be a better way to go through it, because it's guaranteed to protect the area a little better and probably a little quicker.
Right. The ironic part is that there really wasn't anything in that job that was all that threatening to the 200-foot
Yeah.
riverfront zone. So, I mean, it was a lot to do. I don't want to say about nothing, but it was a lot to do about procedure that certainly could have been avoided if the applicants were willing to admit the reality of the perennial stream. I
And
mean, 4 photographs for somebody who's been there for over 40 years shouldn't have been too hard to put down on the table. That's all you got to do.
I completely agree, and I think that was another thing where they felt comfortable issuing the superseding order conditions was because the project did meet the standards, even if it was a perennial stream. So I think
Yeah.
this is one of those things that it really stinks, and it wasn't a great situation for us to go through because it was very long, it was very difficult. So I just wanted to apologize to the commission.
That's all. I just wanted to comment on it. Budget.
I have a budget locked in my desk drawer that I forgot to bring, but I can email it to you all, I'm sorry.
Were you Rich?
Yes.
Just on the budget, I don't know if it's totally related, but there was, I did reach out to the mayor today to request, to see if there was an alternative way of making payments for MAC classes, because I guess they don't accept POs anymore. So I don't know if the city can write a check. I know that there was discussion about that in the past, and so I just sent it this afternoon, so.
Thank you. I'll follow up with them because I know it's a big issue for me. I know a couple other members have voiced their concerns that they can't go to classes because they're $75, and they require that you pay for it right when you register now. So you can't register for it, send it to the comptroller's office, and then have them send a check. Like you have to use your own credit card.
I want to say they wrote a check once when I went to like a MAC training.
They do that but you have to call and speak to them and beg them tooth and nail to accept the check, and then if the check doesn't reach them in time,
No, they let me bring it. They let me register, but I had to bring the check with me too.
they've stopped doing that.
Oh, they don't.
And I completely understand why. They have cities and towns who owe them money for courses other agents have taken, their commissioners have taken, and I don't know the exact reason why, but cities and towns don't pay their late bills.
Well, this was a check. It was a live check. It wasn't.
they-
It wasn't a PO. It was
So-
actually they wrote a check. The city wrote a check that I hand delivered upon registration
see
of that day.
I don't know if they do that anymore, because I know whenever I need, like, for example, if I need something, I have to put out a warrant, and it has to be reviewed by several people,
Yeah.
and then they write the check 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if they can still do that. I can evaluate that, because I'd love to see everyone come to more MACC meetings.
They don't have a purchase card or anything?
No credit cards for the city employees.
Oh, I didn't know if
That
somebody
I know
had a
of.
central one, or, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they did away with that, a couple of years ago, I believe. I wasn't given access to it, so.
There's no way to do like, I mean, I certainly understand if someone's like, oh, I can't pay $110 up front, but if you were able to, there's no.
They will reimburse you.
Is there a process for reimbursement?
There is, but it could take 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
Or more.
Okay.
Which I know for some people that can be
Sure.
devastating.
Sure,
So.
yeah, no, I was just curious if they at least did that.
And I did make mention too that, I mean, we're gonna have more members, new members, so there's the potential for more, training being required, not required, but requested. So that, I don't know, it's like $700 in training we get a year, or $800 as a commission, is gonna need to grow, because the more you introduce new people, you gotta get those people.
For example,
We want them involved in MACC classes and workshops, and getting, educated, being able to communicate with other people from other cities and towns to see how things are done.
yeah, I think, and I find the classes extremely helpful and extremely,
They're very well done. They're very well done. I've taken a lot of them.
and it's always nice to see and make connections with other agents and other communities,
Yeah.
because it gives you, for me at least, it gives me a support system.
You still have Holy Cross.
Sorry?
Do they still have Holy Cross?
Yes, for
Yeah.
the yearly, really good.
Yeah. Well, it's nice too because it's you see a lot of when I was a consultant, I took a lot of those classes just for my own knowledge. So it's nice to it's not just commissioners and agents. It's a lot of different people that work in the industry that find those classes helpful. So
I'll follow up with that too, just to make sure we have that.
All right, so our next meeting is Tuesday, January 28th, which is next Tuesday. The deadline was January 10th. So,
That's a long time ago.
yeah.
If I can just, I just want to mention, sorry.
No.
I've had a couple representatives complain to me about the deadlines for the 2 weeks. And so I just kind of wanted to explain it real quick again. I know we had voted on changing the deadline to make it, that one is a little bit longer because of the Martin Luther King Day holiday. But for example, applicants, they want to have the file completely reviewed by the meeting. They want to have for example, they want to have, one of the applicants said they wanted to have their issuance tonight. But they met with me, I reviewed the file, I gave them all the information beforehand. And that's why we have it so much earlier, so we can try to issue it the first night. Most of the filings we had tonight, we were able to issue because I believe I reviewed the file thoroughly before. And that's why the deadline has changed, so if anyone gets any complaints, I apologize, but I need time to review the file thoroughly.
So how,
As well as in 11 business days to do the legal ad.
yeah, so what is it? It's the Friday, so like if our meeting is Tuesday, it's
already passed.
that Friday, like a week and a half past or 2 weeks past?
Usually it's 2 weeks, but if there's
Does
a
that make
holiday,
sense?
I got a couple
Friday
days.
back.
Yeah.
Second Friday back. And that's just to ensure that if I'm on vacation or if I'm out sick or I had time to review the files, especially where I've been getting as many applications at once.
Sure.
And I'm able to bend, not that I bend it, but for example, for an extension permit, I typically don't need 11 days to review an extension permit, stormwater calculations, because they've already been reviewed. But it's still, so typically, for example, this extension permit on here that I received last week, I said that's fine, because I know the file, I reviewed the file, I'm comfortable with this one. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware in case anyone complains to you, as well as say it for any of our lovely viewers.
And I did have the good fortune of being the conservation agent on an interim basis. And I can tell you the previous deadlines we had, when people filed it at 5 p.m. on the last day, it made things very difficult to get things in order for the meeting. Because you gotta run around, you gotta, like you said, you gotta get that ad in. It's not worth, you need time to prepare. And
Yeah. As well as the agent wears so many hats.
Yeah.
This is unfortunately not the only thing that I'm doing.
And a lot of times we would get like a plan, and we'd be like, well, what is this? And, the conservation agent hasn't seen it, the commission hasn't seen it. The applicant comes in and it's incomplete, and we didn't find that out because it wasn't a review. So I think what we're doing is.
I think it's better, the process, especially with how busy we've been compared to other years. Usually don't have as many meetings in the winter, so. Not that I love seeing you guys.
All right. Does anybody have anything else? All right, with that, I declare the meeting adjourned.